because we are ever changing and so dynamic. We can't just get there and assume, okay, I've done my part. This is all I'm required to do to maintain the status quo. Is that what you want? Is a status quo marriage? No wonder it's falling apart.
You know, change can be a funny thing. We get a new job and it's growth. We move to a new location, we're excited for the change, but divorce is huge change, and we see it as massive failure. Not everybody, but a lot of people. How can we reframe that and shift it and look at it for actually what it is instead of failure?
Many areas of our life, we are complete with one phase and we move to another phase. And usually everybody's going around and saying, good job, that's what you should. I mean, if you are in the same job, in the same position, in the same way for 25 years, usually people look at you and say, you're a loser. How come you're not shifting? How come you're not going somewhere? If we only handled our friends from, high school and never grew to any other friends or social community, that would be a failure versus anything else. So it's interesting that in the business world, in social world, in community world, in many other world, the fashion world, if we still wore the same things, it wouldn't be appropriate. Yet when it comes to marriage, it seems like for marriage, if it's working, it's because it's growing. If it's not growing and if it's not working for someone, and due to that, if it's pain and suffering and they decide to actually get a divorce, that shouldn't be looked upon as a failure, not from themselves nor from the community.
I did what I felt I needed to do to be able to walk away from the marriage and not look back with regrets. I grew up in a very religious household where we did not believe in divorce, and we still don't believe in divorce. However, to stay in a marriage that just isn't working and your partner will not work with you no matter how much therapy you try and how much you try to adjust yourself and accommodate them, and it's just not working, you get to a point where you realize, okay, this is the relationship that's not working. It doesn't mean that I'm not trying or that I'm a personal failure, that I can't ever make a relationship work. But I felt like I needed to see a therapist with my ex-husband before we got divorced and try everything humanly possible to try to save the marriage. And then at that point I felt like I'm no longer a failure. I did have some guilt feelings. I felt like, okay, now I have this blemish on my record, you have a failed marriage, but I can honestly say that I tried everything possible to save it, and I was able to walk away with peace.
It took me a while to find my peace because I felt like a failure as a wife. I was in a little bit more of a traditional marriage where I kind of felt like the support system for my husband in the emotional capacity and on the home front. And so when there were messages of, you're not good enough, I felt like a huge failure. And those messages were coming for a while, and I felt like I couldn't do anything right. So after a few years of that, I really felt like I was a complete failure at when I was a little girl, that's all I wanted to do was be in partnership because that's what my parents had modeled. And I saw my mom, put on her lipstick before she'd come home, before my dad would come home from work. And I wanted to model that. And it was wonderful and beautiful until it turned ugly and horrendous, yeah. And, in my book, I am very vulnerable and expose how that path was for me. The book is Wine, Sex, and Suicide, My Near-Death Divorce, because I think so many women feel worthless at the end of that marriage, especially when they've been trying to see themselves as, a nurturing spouse and, caregiving for the husband and taking care of the home front.
Well, I think a lot of men feel that way too. I mean, I protected, I provided, and she left. Like, what happened here? I thought I did my job. Even if they weren't the best husband in the world, and they didn't fulfill all the needs, I still held down my end of this agreement. So what the hell happened? How did I mess that up?
Yeah. It's more than just an agreement, though. I mean, this is a working relationship. We constantly have to work at it. People feel like, oh, I've gotten to marriage and that's it. It's easy breezy. The first years of marriage are all glamorous and honeymoon, and it's not. You get out what you put into it. And a lot of people feel, okay, I've done my end of the bargain, and that's all I should have to do. And they stop working on the relationship. And then unravels at the seams. You have to continually, people are dynamic and they change constantly. I'm not the same person I was 5 years ago. We need to continue to work on the marriage because we are ever changing and so dynamic. We can't just get there and assume, okay, I've done my part. This is all I'm required to do to maintain the status quo. Is that what you want? Is a status quo marriage? No wonder it's falling apart.
You know, and that's exactly, I have such, this topic drives me crazy personally because we have two different beliefs about marriage as a society. One is marriage is about commitment, it's about family, it's about love and personal fulfillment. So you're entitled to be happy in your marriage, right? Great, we would all buy into that. And then marriage is forever. Okay, so which is it? If your marriage isn't forever, are you a failure because you wanted the other thing that you were supposed to have, which was personal fulfillment and love and support? Or are you a success if you stay in a marriage where you get none of your needs met and it's abusive and maybe you've got a spouse with substance abuse, or you're not getting supported, or you're not growing? Is that a success?
And you set that example for your children.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a problem with what do we define as failure and what do we define as success? And I know that's different because you can have this all in your head and you can feel something totally different. But even still, I just have a problem with people looking and feeling like I'm such a failure because I was divorced. I think we need to step beyond that and say, no, maybe it's not about success or failure. Maybe it's about this is life and this is growth and this is where I am. And this is reality and this is what I have to deal with.
So I think what we're saying is remove all those labels. Stop talking about yourself as a divorcee. So all of you out there, okay? You're not divorcees. You're newly single. There's a big difference.